Welcome back to the History of AI podcast for a deep dive into a question that's, well, honestly, kind of blowing my mind.
The AI-human merger?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like every day AI is getting more and more sophisticated, but what happens when it goes from being out there in the world to, like, inside us?
Well, it's a question that's moving from science fiction to reality pretty quickly, actually.
So no more robots taking over the world now. It's robots becoming us.
Not quite robots, but the lines are definitely blurring between human capability and machine enhancement.
Okay, so for this deep dive, you brought some research on some pretty wild stuff.
Yeah.
Brain-computer interfaces, AI-powered prosthetics, even the philosophical side of becoming cyborgs.
It's a lot to unpack.
Where do we even begin?
Well, you really can't talk about the human-machine merger without talking about brain-computer interfaces.
BCIs.
Exactly, BCIs. They're devices that allow your brain to communicate directly with machines.
Okay, like something straight out of the Matrix.
Kinda, but the tech is actually already here.
Really? Like people are walking around with cables plugged into their heads?
Not quite yet, but one of the leading companies in this space is Neuralink. You know, the one founded by Elon Musk.
Oh yeah, I've heard of them.
Their goal is to create these implantable chips that can treat neurological conditions like paralysis.
So like helping people regain lost function.
Exactly. And they're not just theorizing. They actually received FDA approval for human trials back in 2023.
Wow, so this is really happening.
It is.
But I know there's been some controversy around Neuralink too, right?
Yeah, there have been some concerns raised about, the ethics of their animal testing, and it just highlights how complex this all is.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that with any powerful technology, there comes, huge responsibility.
Absolutely.
But it's not just Neuralink working on this, right? I was reading about another company, Synchron, and they're actually ahead of Neuralink in human trials.
That's right. Synchron's approach is less invasive. They implant their device through blood vessels.
Oh, so less risky than like open brain surgery.
Exactly. And the really amazing thing is that they're already seeing success helping paralyzed patients communicate.
Wait, so someone who's completely paralyzed could send like a text message just by thinking about it?
Yeah, pretty much. Their device allows users to control a computer cursor with their thoughts, so they can browse the internet, send emails, even shop online, all without lifting a finger.
That's incredible. It's like a direct line from your brain to the digital world.
It is, and it's a huge step towards, restoring autonomy for people with severe disabilities.
That's a powerful example of how this tech can be used for good.
Definitely.
But the medical applications are just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
This could potentially change how we all interact with technology.
Absolutely. Imagine controlling your smart home with your mind, or learning a new language just by downloading it to your brain.
Well, hold on. Now we're getting into some serious science fiction territory.
I know, right? But some researchers believe that BCIs could actually enhance our memory and learning abilities.
Like we could become super intelligent.
Potentially, but with any new technology, there are potential downsides too.
Right, because not everyone's going to have equal access to this kind of technology.
Exactly, and it's going to be expensive, at least initially, so there's a real concern about an enhancement divide.
Where the rich get to upgrade themselves and everyone else is left behind.
Yeah, essentially creating a world where the wealthy have access to superintelligence, enhanced physical abilities, maybe even extended lifespans, and it creates this huge gap between the haves and the have-nots.
It's like every sci-fi movie warning us about the dangers of technology.
Very much.
But let's not get too ahead of ourselves before we start worrying about cyborg overlords. Maybe we should talk about some of the more practical applications that are already being developed, like what about AI-powered prosthetics?
Yeah, that's another area where we're seeing some really amazing progress. These aren't just your grandpa's artificial limbs. We're talking about prosthetics that can learn and adapt to the user's movements, providing a level of dexterity that was unimaginable before.
Okay, you've got my attention. Tell me more.
Well, one great example is the Luke arm.
Like Luke Skywalker.
Exactly. It's named after his prosthetic hand in Star Wars.
Okay, I'm listening.
It uses AI to interpret muscle signals, allowing users to make very precise movements.
So someone using this arm could do things that require a lot of fine motor control.
Yeah, there was actually a demonstration where a woman using the Luke arm was able to pick up a single grape and eat it.
Wow.
That level of precision is a huge breakthrough for amputees.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about how this kind of technology can restore not just like basic function, but also the ability to experience things that most of us just take for granted.
Right.
But if AI can help us control prosthetic limbs, Could it also be used to create artificial organs?
That's a very real possibility. Researchers at Columbia University are actually working on an AI-driven synthetic kidney.
An artificial kidney.
Yeah, it could potentially revolutionize dialysis treatment. It uses machine learning to filter blood more efficiently than traditional methods.
So we could be talking about artificial organs that work even better than our own natural ones.
It's definitely a possibility, and it opens up a whole new world of possibilities for extending human lifespan and improving quality of life.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, but it also brings us back to those ethical questions we were talking about before. If we can enhance our bodies with technology, where do we draw the line? What does it even mean to be human in a world where man and machine are becoming more and more blurred?
It's almost like we're on the verge of becoming cyborgs, like something out of science fiction. And it's happening right now in our lifetime. This is really making me think about the future in a whole new way.
I know, it's fascinating stuff.
But before we get too deep into the philosophical implications, maybe we should talk about what it actually means to be a cyborg. I mean, where do we draw the line between human and machine?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we'll be back soon to talk more about cyborgs and the future of the AI-human merger.
Sounds good. Welcome back
to the History of AI podcast, where we're picking up our deep dive into this whole AI-human merger thing.
And like we promised, we're going to delve deeper into what it really means to be a cyborg.
Which I guess say still feels pretty sci-fi to me.
I get that, but the concept is moving away from science fiction and into reality pretty rapidly.
Okay, so when I hear the word cyborg, I instantly think of movies like Terminator or RoboCop, part human, part machine, usually with some kind of weaponized enhancements.
Those are definitely some of the more dramatic examples, but the reality is that the cyborg spectrum is much broader than that. It actually encompasses anyone who uses technology to augment or enhance their abilities.
So someone with a pacemaker or a cochlear implant could be considered a cyborg.
Exactly. Those are medical technologies that have become so commonplace that we don't even think twice about them. They seamlessly integrate with the human body, and we don't typically think of those individuals as cyborgs, but technically they fit the definition.
Huh. That's a good point. I guess our perception of what a cyborg is constantly evolving as technology advances. But what about those more extreme examples? The people who are choosing to enhance themselves with technology, even if it's not for medical reasons.
We're starting to see more and more of that, actually. For example, there's Neil Harbison, a colorblind artist, who implanted an antenna in his skull that allows him to hear colors.
Wait, what? He can hear colors?
Yeah. He identifies as a cyborg and considers the antenna to be a part of his body.
Wow. That's taking things to a whole new level. But it raised an interesting question. What happens to our sense of identity when we start merging with technology in such a fundamental way?
It's a question that philosophers and ethicists are grappling with right now. Some argue that these technological enhancements can actually expand our sense of self, allowing us to experience the world in new and profound ways.
And others are worried we're going to lose our humanity.
Right. They worry that we risk becoming more machine-like and losing what makes us human.
It's a lot to think about for sure. But I'm also curious, how are societies around the world reacting to this whole idea of human augmentation?
There's definitely a range of perspectives. Some cultures, like Japan, they have a greater acceptance of robotics and AI as part of everyday life,
Right, they have those robot companions and stuff.
Exactly. But in other parts of the world, there's a lot more skepticism and even fear about the potential consequences.
Yeah, I can see that it's a pretty big leap for a lot of people.
It is.
But let's go back to this idea of an enhancement divide for a second.
Yeah.
We touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth digging into a bit more.
Absolutely. It's one of the most pressing ethical concerns surrounding human augmentation because as these technologies become more sophisticated and potentially more expensive, there's a real risk that they'll only be accessible to a privileged few.
So we can end up with a society where the rich have access to enhanced physical abilities, maybe even extended lifespans, while everyone else is left behind.
It's a real concern, and it could exacerbate existing inequalities and create a whole new class system based on technological enhancement.
It's like that movie Elysium, where the rich live on a fancy space station and everyone else is stuck down here on a polluted, overpopulated Earth.
Exactly. And it's not just science fiction. We're already seeing hints of this divide with things like the high cost of certain medical treatments and technologies.
Right, like those gene therapies or personalized cancer treatments. Those are often only available to the super wealthy.
Exactly. So imagine that same dynamic applied to cognitive enhancements or life extension technologies. It paints a pretty bleak picture.
Yeah, it does. It raises some serious questions about fairness and justice.
Hmm.
Do we have an obligation to ensure that everyone has access to these technologies, or will they just become another tool for the wealthy to hold on to their power?
Big questions with no easy answers.
Yeah, for sure. But let's try not to dwell on the negative. I'm still curious about the potential for human enhancement to do good in the world.
Oh, absolutely. These technologies have incredible potential to improve lives in countless ways. We've already talked about the medical applications, restoring mobility for paralyzed individuals,
Hmm.
creating artificial organs.
Right, and who knows what other breakthroughs are just around the corner. Maybe we'll cure Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Maybe we'll even reverse aging altogether.
There are scientists actively exploring all of those possibilities, and as AI continues to advance, it's likely to play an even bigger role in shaping the future of human enhancement.
It's exciting and a little bit scary to think about all at the same time, but I'm glad we're having this conversation, because the choices we make today will really impact the future of humanity.
I completely agree. And as we move forward, it's crucial that we approach these advancements with both caution and optimism, making sure they benefit all of humanity, not just a select few.
I like that caution and optimism.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah, it is. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, maybe we should take a step back and look at the big picture. What are the ultimate goals of human enhancement anyway? Are we simply trying to improve our lives, or are we aiming for something more profound?
It's the age-old question, isn't it? Some believe that human enhancement is just natural progression, a way for us to overcome our biological limitations and reach our full potential.
And others think it's messing with the natural order.
Exactly. They see it as dangerous hubris that could have unforeseen consequences.
It's complicated.
It is a complex and multifaceted issue with no easy answers.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore.
There is. But for now, let's shift our focus to maybe the most mind-boggling concept of all the potential for AI to reshape not just our bodies, but our very consciousness.
That's where we're headed next.
Digital immortality and uploading our minds to computers.
You got it.
Okay, now you're really blowing my mind. I can't wait to hear more about this.
We'll dive into all of that and more in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dive into the deep end of the pool.
The really deep end.
Yeah, we're talking digital immortality, uploading our minds to computers, the whole 9 yards.
That's right, all those concepts that used to be pure science fiction.
But now we're saying they could actually happen?
Advances in AI and biotechnology are making it more and more plausible.
I gotta admit, this is all a little hard to wrap my head around. Are we really talking about, uploading our minds and living forever in a digital world?
It may sound far-fetched, but there are some serious players who believe this is not just possible, but inevitable.
Like who?
Well, there's this company, Altos Labs. They've got billions of dollars backing them, and their goal is to literally reverse aging.
Verse aging, so we wouldn't die?
That's their goal, to achieve biological immortality.
Wow, okay. But even if they figure that out, what would that even look like? Would we be living in some kind of virtual reality world?
That's one possibility. Some futurists envision us creating digital copies of our minds, free from our physical bodies, living in vast virtual worlds.
Sounds kind of cool.
It does, but it also raises some big questions.
Like what?
Well, would we still be human if we were just digital copies? What happens to our consciousness?
Yeah, what even is consciousness? Can you just upload that to a computer?
Those are questions philosophers have been debating for centuries, and now they're becoming real-world problems.
It's a lot to think about, and it feels like we need to figure this out before the technology gets ahead of us.
I agree. The choices we make now will have huge implications for the future.
But let's not get too lost in the existential dread here. Are there any, potential upsides to digital immortality?
Oh, definitely imagine a world where the greatest minds of all time could live on, digitally sharing their knowledge and wisdom.
So, Einstein could still be teaching us physics.
Exactly. We could have access to an incredible amount of information and experience.
But I wonder, would it change our relationship with death? If we knew we could live forever, would we still value life as much?
That's a really interesting question, and honestly, I don't know the answer. Death has always been a fundamental part of the human experience. It gives meaning to our lives. It motivates us.
And if we take that away, what happens.
It's uncharted territory for sure.
It is, and I think it's important to be having these conversations now as we enter this new era of technology.
Absolutely. We need to proceed with both caution and optimism, making sure we're shaping the future in a way that benefits everyone.
And to ensure, as philosopher Nick Bostrom cautions, the future of humanity is at stake. We must ensure technology reflects our values, not our vulnerabilities. Thank you for listening to the History of AI podcast.